I want to thank the opportunity to be able to talk to pastors in Georgia and literally all over the country. I'm a psychologist by training, so I want you to look at this as maybe biblical therapy. We all need a shrink every now and then. I'm uniquely qualified because my dad was a pastor. I grew up in a parsonage. That's why I became a psychologist, because I thought these people need a lot of help. Then I pastored a church for 10 years in Albuquerque, and I consult with pastors all across the country. So I want to help you today understand how to live a great life, primarily in the area of relationships. People sometimes ask, well, what do you do? Best way I can explain what I do is, I remember when I was a kid, the only thing we had to play with was the outside. That's pretty much all we had. So we played marbles. Now, I love marbles. You had roly-polies, black beauties, steelies, you named your marbles. Now, for some of you young pastors, this is going to be like the History Channel, all right? But just think about it. You know, galaxy far, far away, the only thing they had was the outside. So we played marbles and games like that. Of course, Dad being a Baptist preacher, you couldn't play marbles for keeps, because that's too much like gambling. And you know, Baptists, we're pretty much against everything. If it tastes good, spit it out. If it's fun, you can't do it. So I'm Baptist born, Baptist bred. When I die, I'll be Baptist dead. I get it, all right? But when I was a kid, when my dad said you can't play for keeps, I disobeyed. I said, well, I want to play for keeps. I want to do what I want to do. So I played for keeps. And there's always a bully, somebody bigger, somebody stronger in the neighborhood. And he would threaten you or maybe just beat you up or just steal your marbles. So after a while, I realized I've lost my marbles. I've lost my marbles. But what am I going to do? I mean, I want to get my marbles back. So I had to go back to my dad, had to tell him the truth, tell him I disobeyed. And my dad would go and consult the bully, sometimes the bully's dad, and he'd get my marbles back. Well, that's what I do in life. Lots of people, well, all of us have lost some marbles along the way. I tell you how good your Heavenly Father is and how you got to tell the truth. You got to face it to fix it. But if you tell the truth can set you free. So we're going to tell you the truth today about an area of life where we all struggle, and that's relationships. If you leave the ministry, I promise you it will be because of relationships. I've worked with thousands of pastors, and it's always relationships. Relationships will give you the most pleasure in life, but they'll also give you the most pain in life. Here's what the Bible says in Genesis chapter 2, verse 18. For the Lord God said, it is not good for man to be alone. It's not good to be alone. You read any psychological profile of anyone that does anything strange, weird, perverted, you'll see a little phrase, this person was a loner. It's not good to be alone. You need to be around other people. That's why God created other people to go along with you. That's why we have family. That's why we have marriage. That's why we have the church. The church is the family of God. God knew that there would be areas of life like divorce, dysfunction. He knew there'd be death in this fallen world. And he knew some people would choose to remain single. And if you can't be all you need to be by yourself, then you need the family of God, people to encourage you. So it's all about relationships. You think, well, why would that be the case? Why did God make it that way? It makes sense when you think about it. God, the Bible says, has three personalities. If you grew up in church, you probably heard that referred to as the Trinity. Now, Trinity is one of those heavenly concepts, hard to understand down here on earth. Matter of fact, if people tell you they totally understand the Trinity, they will lie about other stuff too. I promise you they don't totally understand it. But although I don't understand it, I accept it because the Bible teaches that God has three personalities. He is Father, He is Son, He is Holy Spirit. For some reason, God the Father needed God the Son in order to do the work of salvation. God the Son needed God the Holy Spirit in order to make His love permanent in our lives. And then it says we are made in the image of God. So what does that mean? That means we need to be around other personalities to complete us because we can't create personalities. Actually, the moment I said that, you probably realized I said that wrong. You actually can create personalities. Now, unfortunately, you have that creative power, but yours is not divine. Yours is dysfunctional. I've actually worked with people who've created their own personalities. We have a diagnosis. We call that multiple personality disorder. And we'll put you in a state hospital or somewhere if you do that. That's not the way to do it. The way to be the person God wants you to be is to be around other personalities, to be around people. And that's what God had in mind. He said, it's not good for you to be alone. You need to be around these other people so I can complete you. You see, I remember when my kids were young, the cousin would come over, and the cousin would call me Uncle Charles. And my kids would kind of look at them and say, he's not your Uncle Charles, he's my daddy. They say, no, he's Uncle Charles. They say, no, he's my daddy. You see, they couldn't understand how I could be two personalities at the same time. Well, I can't understand how God could be that way, but because he is, and because we're made in his image, we need to be around other people to complete us. Matter of fact, I run across people sometimes, they say, well, all I need is God. It's not what the Bible says. The Bible says you can't be all I want you to be, what God says, by yourself. So we need relationships. We need other people to challenge us, to grow us like heavenly sandpaper to rub against us, to be the people God had in mind when he created us. Well, how does it all work? Well, life works in stages. So I'm going to give you the stages that relationships go through. Amen. All of life, of course, goes through stages. My wife and I are in that empty nest stage of life. People say, when does life really begin? I can tell you, it really begins when the kids leave home and the dog dies. That's pretty much when life really begins. That's the empty nest stage. That when you have each other. Unfortunately, in America today, we're having what we call the gray divorce. These people don't have great relationships, and the only thing holding them together is the kids. And when the kids leave, they get a divorce. Why? Because they didn't work on their relationships. They only worked on being with the kids. The best thing you can do as a parent is to have a great relationship in a marriage situation so they can see that, so they can observe that. What is the stages that relationships go through? Well, the first stage is the wonderful stage. That's when you see all the wonderful things about another person. And by the way, all of life goes through these stages. Remember the first job you really wanted, and you maybe got somebody to recommend you, and you thought you had found the perfect job? They told you get to do this, you get a budget for this, you're going to get to do this, and you think you found the perfect job. And you have until you go to work. And then they say, wait a minute, I didn't know about this, I didn't know about that. Well, that's the way life is. You find the perfect church, and it is until you join, and then, well, I didn't know they did this, and I didn't know they did that. Or you find the perfect friend, and they already get to know them. Everybody's normal to get to know them, and then you think, well, I didn't know they did this, and I didn't know they did that. Well, that's the way life is. So we have that wonderful stage. And that's when you see all the wonderful things. That's when you do premarital counseling, by the way, which I call an exercise in futility, because they're just saying all the wonderful things the other person wants to hear. I call it the urge to merge stage. That's when one gland's calling out to another gland, let's get together. It's like hormone heaven, let's get together. And unfortunately, people lie during that stage because they just want this person for the rest of their life. So they cover up their insecurities or difficulties to try to win this person over. Men especially lie. I'll be honest with you. I lied. Whatever Penny said, I just said yes. By the way, Penny's my wife, for those who don't know. I just said yes. I said, she said, you love shopping? Yes, I love shopping. You love the mall? Oh, I love the mall. Just to be with you on a Saturday at the mall, that'd be a great day. I was lying. I just wanted to merge. God knew that I was lying. He looked down and said, that's my boy Charles. He's lying. I got to teach him a lesson. That's how I got 3 daughters for lying. God told the birth angel, send him 3 daughters. He's going to spend his life in the mall for lying. So that's how I got 3 daughters. Matter of fact, raising 3 daughters was difficult in and of itself. Some days I'd actually go out and talk to the mailbox. This is the only mail thing in my house. I'd say, mailbox, it's tough in there today. Blunt force drama about every other day with 3 girls. So we all have that stage, though, that wonderful stage. And then what happens? We get married, and reality sets in. And from wonderful, we can go to war. Difficulties, because we find this person, this perfect person, always look good, smell good, never go to the bathroom. And now what happens? We have a real person. They'd always look good and always smell good, spend their life in the bathroom. You have a real person. So that's an adjustment. Matter of fact, what happens there? Why do we have war? Let me give you some reasons why we have war. The first is just personality differences. I was attracted to my wife. Not only is she beautiful, she was organized. I thought, I need somebody organized. I didn't know how organized until we got married. I knew I was in trouble. She wanted to clean up the rice at the wedding before we went on the honeymoon. I know we're in trouble. And then I realized this lady is clean. Color-coded closet, shoes face north. That kind of clean. I'm sloppy. I'm not a clean kind of guy. I thought God made poster beds for pants, shirts, and underwear. I think it was the underwear on her side that really got her. I used to say we had a brief problem, but I won't say that. And so we had difficulty. I had to adjust. I would put out my Diet Coke and it would be gone. It'd be in the dishwasher. It'd be the paper. I'd put it down and I wouldn't even finish reading. It'd be gone. I asked her, "What do you think God's trying to teach me?" He said, "He's trying to teach you enjoy things while you have them. Never know we're going to lose them." And so all of a sudden I realized there's some adjustments that has to be made here. One night I got up to go to the bathroom, came back, the bed's made, and I said, "Honey, that's a little overboard." You understand? But we all have these personality differences, and the very thing that attracted you, see, opposites attract before marriage. But in marriage, sometimes opposites attack. The very thing that attracts you from a distance starts to irritate you up close. So we have personality differences. Another thing we have is family differences. You did things as a family totally different than what the person you married did. They had a totally different family, went to vacation different places, took out things different. They just did, for example, something small like the trash. My mother took out the trash. I don't know why. She just always took out the trash. Penny's father took out the trash. We got married, nobody took out the trash. I thought, well, that's what women do. She thought that's what men do. Now I know that's what men do. She told me that. It actually takes two to take out the trash, by the way, if you're married. The lady remembers it and the man takes it out. That's how it works. So we have this wonderful stage that turns to war primarily because of personality differences, family differences, and then the big one, which is male-female differences. Men and women just grow up differently. Men grow up competing, king of the hill, capture the flag, put a helmet on, seriously injure the other guy. That's how we grew up. Women grow up not competing, but cooperating, talking. They're much more verbal. 4 years of age, 100% of what little girls say is totally intelligible. At 4 years of age, 40% of what little boys say is totally unintelligible. So all of a sudden, we have this man who's very competitive. We have this woman who's wanting to cooperate, and they don't understand each other. Matter of fact, I can remember the first vacation we went on, and my wife said, "Can we stop at the rest area?" And I said, "Not till I pass this Chevrolet." She said, "What Chevrolet?" I said, "The Chevrolet passed me 20 miles back. I've been trying to catch it ever since. That Chevrolet." You see, that's how I function as a male, that competitive. So when a woman asks a man what happened at work, he gets all bent out of shape. Why? Because he thinks somehow she's competing with him to find out what he did right or what he did wrong. And so we have male-female differences. They've actually done research with male and female brains. They actually took a male and a female in different groups, and they put them in a room, and they hooked them up where they could listen to novels. But they also hooked up the brain so they could watch the brain as a woman listened and as a man listened. As a woman listened, two sides, the brain has two hemispheres, and that part in the middle is called the corpus callosum, and that connects the two. When a woman is listening to a novel, both sides of the brain lights up. She's listening with both hemispheres. When a man listens to a novel, only one side of the brain lights up. Now, women, you've been thinking for years that when I talk to a man, it's like talking to someone with half a brain. And it actually is the case. Men only listen with part of their brains. And because of that, communication becomes very difficult for them. That's why when a lady says, "Let's talk," a man would want leprosy or a root canal. He doesn't want to talk because that's his weakness. That's what he has difficulty with. So to help a man in relationships, we have to help him to communicate. And that's what we'll do a little bit later when we get to the more practical part. This is a little more abstract, and we will get to the practical. I've always been practical. Even when I was in private practice, I was very practical. One of my patients couldn't remember anything. I said, "When'd your problem start?" He said, "I can't remember." I said, "What have you done about it?" He said, "I can't remember." He said, "Doc, what do I do? I can't remember anything." I said, "Here's what you do. You pay me in advance. That's what you do." Okay, so I've always been very practical, and we're going to be practical with you as we get through the stages. So we go from wonderful to war, and then the next stage is we start to wonder. We wonder, did we take the wrong job? We wonder, did we join the wrong church? We even wonder, did we marry the wrong person? We start comparing our reality with a fantasy that does not exist. I would have these guys come in and they'd be seeing a psychologist. They'd be all nervous, and finally, I said, well, what's your problem? I said, well Doc, I think I've married the wrong person. What do I do? I said, well, you don't do anything. We all married the wrong person. We married that perfect person. That person that we thought was perfect, and now we find out they're not perfect. And now we start to compare our reality with a fantasy that does not exist. A guy will start to compare his wife to maybe a secretary at work, and he'll say, my secretary listens to me. She's always in a good mood. She dresses nicely. And I say, well, I got an answer for that. Pay your wife and let her off at 4:30. She will be in a good mood. She'll dress nice. You can't compare those things because you're comparing your reality with a fantasy that doesn't exist. When I was in private practice, ladies used to say something like this: I wish my husband would listen the way you would listen. If he would be compassionate the way you're compassionate. If he'd look into my eyes when I talk the way you look into my eyes. And I'd say something like this: pay him $150 an hour like you're paying me. He'll look in your eyes when you talk. You see, we're comparing things that can't be compared. So we start to, after war, we start to wonder. And then we have to get to the part where we actually do the work of relationships. The grass is greener because somebody's watered it, fertilized it, taken care of it. If the grass is green and nobody appears to be taking care of it, there's a septic tank somewhere. I promise you, it doesn't work like that. So we have to work at relationships. For it to work, we have to work. But here's the key. You cannot do the work of relationships unless you understand the worship of relationships. Relationships are not secular, they're spiritual. Jesus met a lady at a well. She had been married 5 times and was living with a guy. And Jesus said to her, and he may be saying to you, when are you going to realize a person cannot meet your deepest needs? A person cannot love you unconditionally all the time. A person cannot give you total forgiveness all the time. If you're looking for a person to do that, you're going to be disappointed. And then Jesus told her, I'm the only person that can do that. I can give you living water. You won't thirst because I can give you total forgiveness. I can give you unconditional love. But when you look for a person to do that, you're in trouble. You see, I really believe that the way you treat your relationships, primarily your family, is the ultimate act of worship. You say, well, how do you get that? Well, 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 7, talking to men, it says to men, if you don't make your wife a partner, if you don't dwell with her according to knowledge, in other words, listen to her, then it says your prayers will be hindered. There's not many places in the Bible where it says, hey, I'm not going to answer your prayers. It's contingent on how you treat people, primarily the people in your family. So I believe it is an act of worship because Jesus was the true worshiper. If we want to worship, we need to do what Jesus did. We think worship is going to church. We think worship is singing songs. If you look at the life of Jesus, he didn't really go to church all that much. And when he did, it didn't go all that well, actually. And we don't really have any record in the New Testament of him singing a song. Now, he may have at one time. He was with a group of people, and they sang a song. But we don't have any record that says he sang a song. We make worship about singing and going to church because that's easy. Worship is really about loving people and blessing people the way God wants them to be loved and wants them to be blessed. Matter of fact, if you do that in 1 Peter chapter 3, at the end of it in verse 12 where it says, verse 7, it says, I won't answer your prayers. Verse 12 says this way, my ears will be open to your prayers. In other words, I want to answer your prayers, but I want it to be contingent on how you treat people and how you love people. So the act of worship is how you treat people. We think worship is about raising your hands, but if you read the Bible, it's about reaching out your hands and blessing people and loving people the way God wanted them to be blessed and the way he wanted them to be loved. So why is that crucial? Here's why it's crucial. It has to be an act of worship. You cannot do the work of relationships unless it's worship because of this one fact. People need love the most when they least deserve it. See, when Penny's in a good mood and things are going well, money in the bank, my schedule's full, grandkids are doing great, it's easy to love her. But she doesn't need my love then. You know when she needs my love? When she's in a stinking mood. and there's no money in the bank, no schedule, grandkids are messing up, I say something nice to her, she says something ugly to me, that's when she really needs my love. That's when I really don't want to give it to her. I want to say, stick it in your ear, lady. I deserve better than this. But that's when I can love her as an act of worship. I can love her when she's a jerkette. Why? Because God loved me when I was a jerk. You see, she can love me when I'm a jerk. Why? Because God loved her because when she was a jerkette. You see, that's crucial to relationships. That's why we've been married many, many years. That's why we'll be married the rest of our lives. That's why we grow old and break our hips together. Why? Because we see it as an act of worship. Matter of fact, if you read that passage in 1 Peter chapter 3, it also says this, you will love your life and you will see good days. In other words, he promises you follow these principles, you're going to have a great marriage, it's going to last a long time, and you're going to see good days. So let's get to the practical part. How do you make love last? And I won't get through the whole word because I usually do this in a conference where they give me 3 hours, so I won't get through the whole thing. But L stands for listen. You've got to listen to people, enter their world in order to know how to love them. And we'll come back to that in the practical part. A stands for appreciate. You got to appreciate what you have because all of us have what I call your Adam suit, your body, your flesh. It wants what it wants. It does not want to feel better. To act better, it wants to feel better. It does not want a plan, it wants a pill. It does not want education, it wants medication. And that's my Adam suit and that's your Adam suit. We're selfish. We want what we want. And it's a constant struggle in order to appreciate what we have because we do come from Uncle Adam. I call it the Addams family. We come from Uncle Adam. And Adam and Eve had everything. And what did they want? They wanted what they did not have. And that's in all of us. As a rule, man's a fool. When he's hot, he wants it cool. When he's cool, he wants it hot. Always wanting what's not. As a rule, man's a fool. And that's me and that's you. And you have to constantly guard against that to appreciate what you have instead of trying to get what you don't have, thinking that will make you happy. And then S stands for serve. You have to learn to serve people out of who you are, not try to impress people with what you do. And then T stands for tell yourself every day what's really important in life. So let's go back to L, and that's where we'll spend our little time about listening. Because in order to love somebody, you have to enter their world. The feeling of love is like a combination lock. And the numbers are different for everybody. So you can't love someone the same way you love somebody else. They won't get the feeling of love. So you have to enter their world to find out how to love them. If you have kids, I promise you, you have to love kids in different ways because they will feel love differently. So how do we do that? We have to learn to communicate. We have to learn to listen. So let me help you with that. L stands, and this is primarily for men because we're the ones with half a brain when it comes to communicating. So L stands for lean forward, look them in the eye. A woman talks as much for process as she does product. A woman talks as much for interaction as she does information. And so because of that, they communicate differently. Men, we're interested in the product, not the process. We're always looking for the answer rather than just talking about things. Women, because the process is important to them, nonverbal communication is important to a woman. In order to pick up on nonverbal communication, you have to lean forward, look them in the eye. That means you put down your phone, your computer, or whatever, so you can pick up on the nonverbal communication. If you come home and your wife's in the kitchen in a position somewhat like this, and you say, "What's wrong, honey?" and she says, "Nothing," then you say something like, "Well, good, I'm going to go play golf." Then you'll soon see Jesus because nonverbally she's telling you everything is wrong. And if you picked up on my nonverbal communication and loved me enough, you would find out what's wrong. You see, the process is what's important to her. So you got to lean forward, look them in the eye. I stands for inquire. And that means active listening. That means you respond to something she said, like, "Well, then what happened? Well, why did they do that?" So that she knows that you're listening. So you lean forward, you inquire. Now, I realize for men, these things are difficult. So I'm going to give you some help right here. I'm going to sum it up. If you can just do this, for most of you, this would be a step forward. When she starts to talk, put down everything. Look her in the eye, lean forward, and then when she pauses, just say, tell me more. I mean, surely you can do that. I mean, just tell me more. Now, when I do this around the country, I have to always tell people the truth. And the truth's, well, sometimes it's just no fun to tell the truth. And it's downright discouraging in this instance, but I'm committed to tell the truth. So women, when a man does that, when he leans forward, looks you in the eye, and says, tell me more, he doesn't really want to know anymore. He's a guy, all right? He's doing it because he loves Jesus and he loves you, and I told him to. So when he does that, keep it short, all right? A man does not want the whole book. He needs a pamphlet. He does not want the whole paper. He needs a headline. You have to keep it short. One guy said, does it bother you that your wife has the last word? He said, no, I'm just excited when she gets to it. And so you have to keep it short. So lean forward, inquire. S stands for stop interrupting. Stop interrupting. You see, a man thinks the answer is what's important, the product. So if he can jump in and give an answer to this problem, he can jump back to the ball game he's watching on TV or whatever he has going on. So men want to jump in and give the answer. That's the wrong approach, guys. Remember, it's the process, not the product. She doesn't want your answer. She wants your assurance that she's important and what she's talking about is important. I'm a psychologist by training. I used to come home and people paid me good money for answers. I mean, that's what I did. And I would come home and we had 3 girls and I would ask how the girls did, and Penny would say, Brienne did this, and Casey did this, and Angela did this. Well, I'm thinking she wants my answers. So I give her answers. I mean, I'm a PhD. I said, do this, and maybe Angela do that. Do this, maybe Casey do that. Why don't you try that? Maybe Brienne will do that. And she looked at me and says, why don't you shut up? And then she walks off. And I'm thinking, hey, they pay good money for this down at the practice, but she didn't want my answers. There's no answers for kids, especially preschool kids. I mean, they're alive and she's alive. That's a good day, There's no answers. So what she needed was my assurance that staying home with those kids all day long was hard work and it was the most important job of our lives. Because you see, that's our kids. I mean, I'm talking to people down in my practice. I don't even know who they are. But she's with my kids. She needed that assurance that it's hard work and that she's the most important person in my life. So she needs assurance. She doesn't need my mouth. She needs my shoulder, okay? So we don't give quick answers. So we stop interrupting with the answer. Women do interrupt men, and it's usually for a totally different reason. And that's because women are good communicators, they're good with relationships, and they remember things that happen in relationships. Men don't. Men remember sports events, but they don't remember what happened in relationships. And so when a man tells a story, he gets the facts wrong. He'll be at some restaurant or something. He'll be telling the guys a story, and he say, we were with the Joneses, and the wife will interrupt and say it was the Smiths. And he said, well, the story's about, there's other people anyway. I just said who they were with, And then he said it was on a Tuesday. She said it was a Wednesday. And then he says it was McDonald's. And she said it was Wendy's. And he said, I don't care. It was a hamburger place. It doesn't matter. It's a weekday. He gets the details wrong. She interrupts him in public. He gets mad and says, you tell the story. Women, let me tell you about man talk. Half of it isn't true. They don't remember. They just make up stuff. But they're telling it to other men, and they don't know either. They can't tell a story with all the truth in it. So just let it go, all right? It's not lies. It's man talk. It's the best he can do, all right? Not worth fighting over. Just let it go. Stop interrupting. T stands for tell them how they look, because remember, nonverbal is, and then give your interpretation of what they said and ask if you're correct. This is to keep you from making assumptions about what your wife says that she's really not saying. For example, a guy buys his dream house. They get a dream house. They've been in about 4 or 5 months. And the wife says something like this: "This pantry sure is inconvenient." And the man, instead of asking, just goes nuts on the inside, thinking the kitchen's inconvenient. I mean, it's a brand new house. It's a $400,000 inconvenient kitchen. Now she doesn't like this house. She wants to get another house. Now we can't afford. And he just starts going nuts on the inside. Or he could do what he's supposed to do. He could say, "Honey, you said the kitchen is inconvenient. Does that mean," okay, that's what you got to come up with. Does that mean, am I correct in this assumption? Does that mean you don't like this house anymore? And she would say something like this: "Oh no, I love this house. This is my dream house. I mean, it's a spectacular house. But, the other pantry was different in that it had shelves right over here to the side. And if we just had shelves right here, it would be perfect." You see how he could put shelves in for $100 because he listened. He probably saved another $50,000 for getting another house because he listened. Don't assume anything. Find out what they said, ask if you're correct. So you lean forward, you inquire, that's active listening. You stop interrupting. You tell them what they said and ask if you're correct. And then E stands for express comfort. If you're going to be in a relationship for a long period of time, you're going to have to learn to comfort each other. We live in a fallen world. Bad things happen. If you would have told me when Penny and I got married that we'd lose a grandchild, that we'd have a grandchild with a rare brain disease and have to have multiple brain surgeries, I'd say, I don't know if we can get through that. But we get through that together, and we learn to comfort each other. We learn to go to places together that bring us comfort. You need to find traditions that you go to as a family and as a marriage couple after your kids are gone, where you've been through in the mountains, and go to a place that has big mountains or big water so you can see how God's creation is so much bigger than your problems. And that'll relax you, and you can encourage each other to get back in the fight after you take some time to comfort each other. Comfort in marriage is very important. E also stands for encouragement. The family is the home court advantage. That's where you need encouragement from people. That's where you need people to say, "Hey, we can do this. We can look on the good side." So learn to be an encourager. Jesus was the greatest encourager who ever lived. Lady caught in the very act of adultery, doing the very worst thing she could do. And everybody condemned her. But what did Jesus do? He encouraged her. He said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." I believe that lady's life totally changed. Why? Because one person encouraged her. Find encouraging words to give to your mate, to your pastors, to your friends. Be the one that people come to for encouragement. That's why they came to Jesus, for encouragement. See, encouragement really means that we bless people. If we go back to that passage in 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 7 and 8 and 9. In verse 9 it says this: "Even when people do evil against you, don't do evil back. Even when they revile against you, don't revile back." Here's what it says: contrary. In other words, contrary to what you want to do, you want to do evil back. Here's what it says: you bless them. You bless them. And then it says this: for this you are called. If you're a Christian, we are called to be the one that blesses. That's what we do. And you say, "Well, what if they don't bless me back?" It doesn't matter. God says that they may never bless you back. See, there are certain people who have pain in their life, and they've never been able to get over the pain. I had an abscessed tooth one time, and I was in so much pain, all I could think about was getting some medication or getting better. I didn't think about other people. I thought only myself. Why? Because I'm in so much pain. That's the way a lot of people are. They're abscessed emotionally. They're in so much pain that it's all about themselves. You don't bless them so they can bless you back. God says you bless them because I will bless you back. I'm the one that'll take care of you. You see, the cross is the biggest plus sign in your life. The cross says this: the worst thing anybody could do to somebody became the best thing for everybody. That means you can bless people no matter what they do to you. Why? Because God can take that and use it for good in your life. Listen, the last N stands for this, guys. Never look at your watch when your wife is talking, okay? Because we get fidgety. We're not used to talking, communicating, so don't look at that watch when your wife's talking. Look her in the eyes to pick up on that nonverbal communication. So that's how we listen. How do you make love last? We've told you what those letters mean, but the T is this. Tell yourself every day what's really important in life. You say, how do you know what's important in life? You live life backwards. You go to the end of your life and you look back on your life. One day you'll come to the end of your life. I hope this has been encouraging, but you're going to die. I mean, death runs in my family. I think it runs in yours. You come in this world, no teeth, no hair, no bladder control. That's pretty much how you're going out. You're going to die. One day you're a peacock, the next day you're feathers. I promise you, you're going to die. Now, what happens when you die? Well, they'll put you in a box and your family go home and eat potato salad. That's pretty much what's going to happen. So how do you know what's important in life? Well, there's a powerful business phrase. Here's what they say. Learn to think outside the box. Go to somebody's funeral. Take Yogi Berra's advice. Yogi said if you don't go to their funeral, they probably won't come to yours. Take Yogi's advice and go to somebody's funeral. I'll tell you the 3 things that show up at everybody's funeral. The only 3 things that matter. Faith, family, and friends. Everything else goes back in the box. If you take your life and you focus on your faith and your family and your friends, you're going to be okay. My wife travels with me. She's heard me say that about they'll put you in a box and go home and eat potato salad. We had something happen to us that I hope never happens to you, but we lost a grandchild. People brought us things, you know what people do, and one day my wife motioned for me to come, and somebody had brought us a large bowl of potato salad. And here's what she said. It happens to everybody. It even happens to us. And it will happen to you. Make sure you focus on your family, your faith, and your friends. My wife, she's got a lot of class, a lot of culture. We went to Paris, France for our anniversary. She wanted me to go to the Louvre. I didn't want to go to the Louvre, but I went because she asked me to. And I discovered something at the Louvre that happened years ago. The Mona Lisa, the masterpiece, was stolen. It was missing for 2 years. Just left a blank space on the wall where the masterpiece used to be. Here's what they found out. More people came during that 2-year period to look at the blank space on the wall where the masterpiece used to be than the preceding 12 years to look at the real masterpiece. And you're thinking, that's weird. And I want to tell you, that's not weird. That's normal. That's all of us. We don't appreciate the masterpieces that God brings into our lives until they become blank spaces. I'm telling you, as a psychologist, as a pastor, as a friend, those masterpieces in your life will always be there. When you need to love them, you need to love them now. My wife, because she has class, she doesn't like country music like me. And there's one song out there, actually it's a pitiful song, don't listen to it either, but it's got a great title. You know what the title is? Who's Your Daddy? Who's Your Daddy? Let me tell you about life. Let's get down to the basics. There's only 2 powers in this world. There's the power of God the Father and His Son, Jesus Christ. And they've chosen to change the world by blessing the world. Even at Calvary, when they could have blasted the world, they chose to bless the world. There's another power, the power of Satan, the evil one, the accuser, the liar. And at every opportunity, he will blast people. 2 powers. One chooses to bless, one chooses to blast. Remember the name of that song? Who's Your Daddy? See, if I could watch you around your house, around your neighborhood, and see whether you bless or whether you blast, I would know who's your daddy. Because our Father has chosen to change the world by blessing the world. And He's chosen to bless the world through us. Primarily our family, but then out to all the people that we come in contact with. Every day decide, I'm not going to be with the power that blessed. I'm going to be with the power that blessed, because I know who my Father really is. God bless you.
All right. Was that a fun ride or what?
Love Charles Lowery.
Yeah, I noticed a few in the chat had never heard Charles Lowery before, so they were in for a treat they didn't know.
You didn't know what was coming, did you?
No, it was great. And I know you did a lot of smiling, a lot of laughing, and you learned a lot. Dr. Lowery is with us today. Dr. Lowery, great job, and thank you for being with us during this time to just give you some questions and get some fresh answers.
Well, thank you. It's going to be fun. We'll have fun with the questions even. I just have fun. I have what I call hot dog Christianity instead of dog tired Christianity. So I'm going to have fun no matter what.
I love it.
And we'll loosen a few halos probably, but they need to be loosened.
That's right. That's right. Well, guys, you've got the chat box there. Maybe you had some questions. The kingdom of God is a kingdom of right relationships. And in the first place, wisdom is applied is relationships because of that. And there's so much wisdom in what you just shared. I tell you, I want to say this off the top. It's so refreshing, especially in our current culture, based on what's politically correct or taboo or otherwise, to talk about things we're not hearing much about, and that is the difference between the count them two, genders. There's a lot of differences to be celebrated. And so you reminded me, and all of us really by the talk you gave, that the church ought to be a place where we can go and learn to celebrate these differences and learn how to live with each other wisely in relationships. So thank you for not changing your message or backing it off or watering it down. Just to be stark real about men and women are different. We need to figure this out and get relationships right. So we've got some questions for you. Scott's going to lead with one. However, in the chat box, guys, if you have a question for Dr. Lowery, you got a psychologist PhD here who obviously gets it when it comes to living life and living well. So ask your questions. Sully, what do you got?
Hey, free counseling session, so ask your questions now. It won't cost you that $150 an hour.
We're paying the $150.
There you go. Hey,
this is free, but it's not that lay down on the sofa and talk about your mother stuff, But by the way, if it isn't one thing, it is your mother. I just thought.
I love it. Now, look, I heard one of the leaders say this. He said it takes the same amount of energy to worry as it does to pray. And Dr. Lowery, just kind of switching gears here for a second, because we are hearing a lot of our leaders that are dealing with anxiety, unprecedented fear, whether that be family or sickness or in the church, these stresses that a lot are saying, listen, seminary didn't prepare me for this. I just want to throw you a softball here and just maybe, what would you say to those leaders that are dealing with that anxiety, maybe some practical steps they could take?
Well, if anxiety and depression are actually what everybody goes through with COVID, I think. My job was speaking to large crowds. So when COVID hit, I thought, the psychologist is depressed. What are we going to do here? Let me give you the 3 Ps that I've given every mega church pastor in America, because they get depressed too. The first P is permanent, and that means whatever you're going through is not permanent. Everything is going to pass. I mean, one day it's going to be over. One day you're peacock, next day you're feathers. It's going to be over one day. Everything you're going through right now, it'll be maybe something different, but it's not permanent. The next thing is personal. It's not God's trying to get you. He'd have got you by now if he's trying to get you. Don't take it personal that you're having these problems because of sin. The book of Job, Satan may be messing with you. You don't know. Job never understood why, and you'll never understand this world. You have to reach a point where I understand. I don't need to understand. I just have to trust. I just have faith that I'm going to get through this. And so you can't look at it as permanent. You will get through it. You can't look at it as personal. But then this is a key. You can't let it be pervasive. You can't let problems and like COVID pervade everything else. You can't let it pervade your marriage. You can't let it pervade your relationship with the Lord. You can't let it pervade all these other kind of issues. People have sometimes unbelievable problems with their children, and they let that pervade their marriage, and they destroy their marriage because they have problems with their children. Well, this too, your children are going to go off one day. I mean, don't let that pervade that. Mm-hmm. So with depression, you have to always work on your thinking. That's crucial. That's why the Bible always talks about renewing your mind. And then as a pastor, let me just give you one really practical thing that will help you. My brother Fred was a great pastor. pastored First Baptist Bossier City. We had a group called Mega Metro that we'd meet every year, and the pastors of the large churches, and I pastored a mega church, talk about problems. And one year we were saying, what keeps you encouraged? And here's what Fred said. He said, here's what encouraged me last year. I went to my brother Charles's church, and I found out there was a lot of people there that didn't like him. And that was a real encouragement to me. And everybody kind of laughed, and I thought, well, thank you, brother. And then he said this. He said, I'm an introvert, and people see me as aloof, and I'm not around people. I just uncomfortable, and so I avoid them sometimes, so they may think I'm arrogant. He said, but Charles is a people person. He's always playing golf with you, take you to, let's laugh, tell you jokes, just have fun with you. Everybody loves Charles. But then I went to his church and found out, wait a minute, they don't love Charles. And then he said, it hit me. It's not the personality, it's their leadership. Once you decide to be a leader, you cannot take things personal. Because leadership requires hard decisions. It takes great decisions to make great churches, by the way. And when you make those great decisions, there's going to be a lot of people who don't like the decision. Now, they try to make it personal toward you, but the only reason you're making that decision is because you're the leader. So I have a little Q-tip here. I don't know if you can see it. I have a little Q-tip. Just put that in your pocket, pastors. And whenever you're feeling like, they're out to get me, and sometimes, a paranoia is healthy in the pastors. Some of them are out to get you. And so just think of that Q-tip. Quit taking it personal. It's because God has allowed you to be in a position of leadership, and you make hard decisions. And the way you understand to get through that is you always think about the cross. The cross is the biggest plus sign in your life.
Come on.
The cross says this: the worst thing anybody can do to somebody became the best thing for everybody. Now, if God can take that and use it for good, no matter what people do to you in the long run, not in the short term, but in the long run, God can take and use it for good. So you renew your mind. And then every pastor needs to have some kind of conditioning program. The reason you can't concentrate, many pastors, on having a great ministry is they're not conditioned. The body, your Adam suit, is the thing you have to do ministry through. Your Adam suit can never be redeemed. God's got to kill it to get you into heaven. But your Adam suit will keep you from having a great life if you're not careful, because your Adam suit does not want to act better. It wants to feel better. Does not want a plan, it wants a pill. Does not want education, it wants medication. That's my Adam suit, and that's your Adam suit. So you have to condition your Adam suit. Every study about depression, the key is exercise. You have to have some kind of regular exercise program in order to be the kind of person God created you to be. And I know all the super spiritual people out there are going to say, well, the Bible didn't talk about exercise. Well, that's because they walked everywhere they went. They didn't have to deal with what we have to deal with. So you need a regular exercise program, and then you need to connect with other pastors. You need to have some pastor friends that you can tell anything to. The problem with being a pastor is once you walk out on that platform, you are presenting a gospel and a message that you cannot act out. You can never be that message. Jesus is the only one that can do that. You will always fall short. There's always a gap between what people see and hear from you and what you really are. And if you're not careful, you try to keep that up. We refer to it as being on. You have to be on all the time. And you can't be on all the time. When you cease to be human, you're gonna get in trouble. You got to be human. You got to realize I can't be on all the time, and I got to be around people who will just let me be me. This is extreme, and it's a joke, so don't get too upset. Let's just say you accidentally killed a deacon. Who would you call to hide the body? In other words, is there somebody that you can tell everything to? Is there somebody that you can be totally real with? And if it's another pastor, you're going to be healthy. You're going to be able to make it. I got two pastor friends I can do that with. And you've got to have that. It's crucial in order to do that. And for pastors, we have to have people that we connect with, not people we're trying to convict and change. And that's our nature. If we're not careful, we're trying to convict everybody. of things that they need to change or do better. We just need to learn how to connect with people and have them as our friends so they can help us. So that's a long answer to a short question, but I talk for a living, so that's what I do.
That's what you do. That's what you do. And I think you've got a question in the chat.
It's
here.
so good. I've got a couple. I want to take a narrower question that was asked and broaden it. The narrow question is, what would you say to a young lady or any age lady who married a plumber, but now he's a pastor, right? She's come through the journey of watching him yield to a call to ministry. What would you say to encourage her? She's going through a major life change. And then I'd broaden it out, especially in light of the pandemic. What would you say to pastors' wives in general right now to help them encourage any minister's wife?
That's good.
Yeah. I would say that you, first of all, lower your expectations. I tell every pastor, they call it about a staff member, they call it, just lower your expectations. We think that, being a pastor's wife or being a pastor, you got to be this super spiritual person that has no problems whatsoever. I mean, think about the Apostle Paul. Remember about Apostle Paul's Adam suit? Here's what he said about it. The things I want to do, I don't do. And the things I really want to do, I can't seem to pull off. That's not a teenager. That's the greatest Christian that ever lived. So that means we need to understand that a pastor is really no different than anybody else, except God's called him to minister to people. He still has to be real, and he has to deal with life that he is not the example. Jesus is the example. You give it your best shot, but you always got to realize you're going to fall short. So I would tell her, don't have these unrealistic expectations that you have to be now this super spiritual person. Being real will be more helpful to the people in the congregation than her being super spiritual. I promise you, because they see as a super spiritual person who they'll never be like, and so they just don't want to be around those people. They want somebody sorry, no good like they are, that's still trying to be what Jesus wants them to be, and they'll relax, and people change in that kind of environment. And so I would just say, hey, just relax. This is an unbelievable call that God's given your husband, and you can help him be real and help him understand people, because women just understand people better than men do. And you can be a big asset to him. But don't put so much pressure on yourself that you got to do certain things different than you're to be a pastor's wife. Just be the best God's created you to be. Not like all the disciples are different. All their personalities are different. And I would just say to all those pastors out there, the most stress in life is when you try to be something that you're not. Practice the gift God's given you. If anybody's ever heard me preach, they know I do not preach like all the seminaries say preach. I don't do any of what they say do. But God, I preached for W.A. Criswell, a Sunday night preacher for 6 years. We had a guy walk out, hold his Bible up, and walk out of church every Sunday night because I didn't preach the way he thought I was supposed to preach. Here's what Dr. Criswell told me. He said, son, you have a gift. Share that gift, and thousands of people will come to Christ. Now, that helped me because W.A. Criswell was an expository, one of the greatest preachers ever, and I didn't preach like that. But he realized I had a gift that other people didn't have, and that was how I was going to win people. You win people to Jesus through the gifts God given you, really not what they teach at seminary.
That's great. That's great. And I think we're about to hit the lightning round here. We got about a minute left.
Yeah, we got about a minute, so let's dive into this. What's a good way to communicate to your friends when you're the single one of the group and you feel like you're having to carry everything by yourself since you don't have a helpmate yet? How do you lean on them? Any advice for single folk?
Well, you just have to express your expectations. Don't hold it in and resent because people can't do what they don't know they're supposed to do. You don't say you do this, though. You say, I feel frustrated when this happens. You learn to communicate, but then you don't manipulate. Communicate, and then God helps work through people to meet your needs. Manipulate means you try to get people to meet your needs. God has the power. If God has the power, you'll pity people. If people have the power, you'll pity yourself. Because you think, well, they're not doing enough for you, this kind of thing. God's the one that'll do that. He'll do it through people, but you have to share all your expectations. Many people do not share their expectations, and they get mad at people because they don't do what they want them to do, and they don't have a clue what they want them to do.
Right. Good stuff. Listen, we're out of time, but this has been rich.
Thank you for being with us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Lowery.
Thank you, and send me some Georgia peaches. It's about that time of season, isn't it?
You bet. Well, some of our Georgia peaches right now are in the chat telling you did a peachy job. So
that's right.
It was great.
That's it.
It was great. Anyway.
bless you.